Hello students, Assalamu alaikum. In the previous lecture, we have discussed blood and some of its components. Today, we are going to continue with the same lecture and discuss the remaining components and some of the blood disorders. So let's first see what we have already discussed. We discussed what is blood, the components of the blood, which is of basically there are two main components. One is plasma, which comprise of 55% of the total blood volume, and the blood cells, which is also known as formed elements, and it comprises of 45% of the remaining blood volume. Blood cells are further classified into three categories: red blood cells, erythrocytes, which was discussed in detail in the previous lesson. Today, we will discuss the remaining two blood components, that is white blood cells, known as leukocytes, and platelets, which is known as thrombocytes. So starting with today's lecture, let's go through that what we have discussed before, starting with what is blood. Blood is a connective tissue in the form of a fluid in our body. It is the medium in which dissolved gases, nutrients, hormones, and waste products are transported. Blood, along with the heart and the blood vessels, comprises the circulatory system of the body. As a tissue, blood is formed of cells and other components. Now let us discuss some more details about cellular components of the blood. To understand the main composition, you need to first understand the method of finding the composition. That is done by collecting a sample of blood and transferring it into sterilized test tubes and centrifuge the blood samples. As I told you before, that centrifugation is a method by which you separate out the components of a fluid or a liquid based on their sizes or densities. So when we will centrifuge it, after that we will observe the components under the microscope. So here's what we have found as a result. This is the peachish fluid is showing you the amount of plasma that is obviously more than the other formed elements, and the remaining is your formed elements comprising of all the kinds of blood cells. Now, hence, we have concluded that there are four main things or components present in the blood, that is plasma, red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. Plasma comprises of around 55% of your blood volume. So let's see what is the constituents. What are the constituents that are making up the plasma? Plasma consists of 90% of the water, and the remaining 10% is of dissolved solutes. Those dissolved solutes can be vitamins, minerals, proteins, and waste products. Here is a list of all the solutes that are present in the plasma. Shown on the screen. There are three main kinds of proteins having different functions: albumins, globulins, and fibrinogen, that are also present in your plasma. The next component of the blood is your formed elements or the blood cells. Let's have a look at them. These are your formed elements present in your vessels. It includes white blood cells, red blood cells, and platelets. Formed elements refer to the cellular components of blood. They include red blood cells or erythrocytes, white blood cells or leukocytes, and blood platelets or thrombocytes. Okay, so what are RBCs was discussed already in the previous lecture. Let's continue with the WBC. I'll give a sum up of RBC after this WBC. What are WBCs? WBCs make, that is white blood cells, they make up about 1% of your blood volume. They are larger than RBC, as it is shown in the picture here. You can see it is larger than the red blood cells, and 1 cubic millimeter of your blood contains 7,000 to 8,000 WBCs. And they have the tendency of changing their shape according to their function. White blood cells are not all similar in size, similar in shape. They can change. There are different types of WBCs that can be seen in our blood, as shown in this table. Unlike RBCs, they are nucleated and independently mobile. In the previous lesson, I told you that RBCs have a nucleus when they are newly formed, and when they are in an immature form, they have nucleus. But as they grow mature, in mammals, they lose their nucleus. So that's why they are called anucleated. A means nil, no, so without any nucleus. But the white blood cells, unlike RBCs, have a nucleus, and not only nucleus, they are more mobile than RBCs. How? Because RBCs are able to move inside your vessels from the cells, heart, lungs, and organs. But WBCs can actually leave the vessels at the time of need and enter into the neighboring tissues or lymphatic tissue as per their need whenever they're required. Now, what is the function of your white blood cells? The main function of your white blood cells is defense in the body. They are the body's main line of defense against the infection. Your body needs to have enough WBC so you can fight against the infections and stay healthy. In your white blood cells, if your white blood cells are low, it is easier for you to fall sick because your body will be more prone to different infections because there is no army fighting in your blood. For example, if you get a sore throat, WBC count will go higher than normal, and this is because your body makes specific WBC to help you get well. So high amount of WBC is a sign of infection in your body. Now, the types of your WBCs. WBCs identify and attack an invading organism, and they produce specific antibodies for that specific antigen. There are three types of WBCs that have specific mission in your body's defense. They are basically categorized into two main types. First is your granulocytes, the other is agranulocytes. The granulocytes means that the white blood cells have some granules in their cytoplasm. As you can see, these first three cells have different colored granules in them. This has blue, this has pink, and this has gray. So it means they all three fall under the category of granulocytes. While the other category, that is agranulocytes, means that A means, again I told you as before, nil. So no granulocytes are present in the cytoplasm. Here you can see no granulocytes, and these two fall under the category of your agranulocytes, that is lymphocyte and monocyte. Now all of these cells have their specific function in defense. Their main function is defense, but how they are producing defense or how they are preventing the foreign agent to infect or produce some worsen situation in your body, starting with your eosinophils. Eosinophil have the tendency to break the inflammatory substances and kill the parasites. It has the ability to kill the parasites. Basophils, they prevent your blood clotting. What is the purpose or what is the benefit of blood clotting, prevention of blood clotting? Basically, blood clot means some accumulation of your blood at a certain point in your vessels. And now when your vessels will have a clot or a hard clot or hard accumulated blood cells at a certain point, automatically the pathway for the flow of your blood will be blocked, and it can produce various infections or diseases. It can be a cause of different kinds of diseases like arteriosclerosis, etc. What happens, the blockage, due to the blockage of the red blood arteries, your blood flow will be interrupted, and when it will be interrupted, your cells will not get the enough blood, and hence your oxygen. Similarly goes for the heart and other organs, so it might cause different diseases. So that's why basophil is there to prevent that clotting. Neutrophil has the ability to kill by the process of phagocytosis. What is phagocytosis? It is the process of engulfing a virus. I will show you in the upcoming slides that it is a process of engulfing a virus or the foreign material coming from outside, and then the cells, the organelles of the animal cell consist of lysosomes, which secrete some chemicals and some enzymes which have the ability to kill the foreign material. So neutrophils engulf them and kill them through their lysosomes. But neutrophil is specific only for smaller germs. They do it by the process of phagocytosis, but for the smaller germs. The granulocytes composition categories of types, they are for the main or major defense mechanism for the bigger agents. For example, monocytes. Monocytes has, what does the monocyte do? Monocyte itself does not participate in the defense. It creates or it produces cells which are like an army of defense against the agent. Those cells are known as macrophages. Those are the macrophages that do the same function just like the neutrophil. But monocytes produce them at a bigger level at the time of need. Lymphocytes, on the other hand, has two categories, B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes. Or you can say in layman language that lymphocytes have two kinds of army. One is B and one is T. And both have their own functions. Now, these lymphocytes are basically for the bigger viruses, bacteria or germs, and they produce specific certain antibodies against that specific germ. For example, if you have a viral infection, that virus is going to invade your circulatory system, and the lymphocytes will recognize that we have got some invading organism which is not a part of your body. So lymphocyte is going to produce certain antibodies which are specific against that virus. That virus or that invading organism is known as antigen in the terms of defense. It will be known as antigen, and the army produced against it, specifically for it, will be known as the antibody of that antigen. So lymphocytes is going to produce that antibody and kill that antigen at that time. Now at that time the person will be healed, but after some time or after some years or sometime later, if the person is going to get infected by the same virus again, your body does not need to produce those antibodies again, because those antibodies or those army that was first produced against that virus will already be present in your blood. And as soon as that virus will invade your body, that antibodies will become active and will fight against it. So this is how the lymphocytes act. Now let's see how our immune system works. Like neutrophils, as I told you, how does it consume the germs by the process of phagocytosis. Same goes with the monocyte that produces macrophages. Now this is the neutrophil, or you can say this is how the macrophages work. They engulf your viruses, that is the invading organ or the antigen. They engulf it, and after engulfing, kill it inside through your lysosomal enzymes or chemicals. This is the same process done by your macrophages of your monocytes and the neutrophils. Okay. So this was all about your white blood cells. Then comes the red blood cells. We have already discussed the main function of your red blood cells is to transport oxygen throughout your circulatory system. Now, how does the red blood cells do this function? They have a specific shape for that purpose. They have a biconcave shape. They have a flattened disc-like structure, like side view. This is the side view of your red blood cells, and this is the top view of your red blood cells. They have a dip over here. Why? Because they have a protein called hemoglobin, which has the ability or tendency to join with the oxygen molecules. It binds with your oxygen molecules, form an oxyhemoglobin complex, and then it runs throughout your whole circulatory system. This is your circulatory system. It includes three parts: your heart, from which is the main center, from which all this circulatory system starts. Then your blood vessels, that includes your arteries and veins, which we will discuss later. Heart will also be discussed later. For now, we are discussing only one part of the circulatory system, that is your blood. Okay, so for now you should know that RBCs are transporting oxygen across the circulatory system by attaching the oxygen with the hemoglobin and releasing that hemoglobin to the certain cells or your body organs. Next formed element or the cellular component of the blood is your platelets. As I told you before, the platelets is not a it's not a complete cellular structure. It does not have a nucleus. It does not have a properly defined shape. You can see here these are the platelets, and they don't have specific structure. They are just the fragments of a bigger cell. Now, where these platelets are formed and how the red blood cells and WBCs are produced, and how the bone marrow, where they are all are produced, recognizes that which kind of cell to be produced. Now, these all three kinds of cells are produced in your bone marrow in a mature organism. I told you before while telling you about RBCs that if there's a if your an organism is the embryonic or fetal stage, then these cells are produced in the liver or spleen. But when the person or when the organism becomes mature, these are produced in your bone marrow. Bone marrow is a fluid present inside your bones, complete strong bones. Now, bone marrow, what does the bone marrow do? Bone marrow does not directly produces these three kinds of cells. It produces a cell which are different, which have different names, but you are not, you don't need to know them right now. You can name them easily by stem cell. Stem cell is the parent cell. Bone marrow produces a stem cell that is also known as a parent cell. From that parent cell, three kinds of cells are produced, which are going to further produce your white blood cells and your red blood cells. The one that is producing red blood cells also produces a bigger kind of cell, which is known as megakaryocytes. Mega means big, karyo means nucleus, and cyte means cells. Now, why it is named megakaryocytes? It is named megakaryocyte because it is a very huge cell and it has a nucleus, singular nucleus, but it is very globular, means there are outbursts coming out of the center of the nucleus. So that megakaryocyte is broken into fragments or smaller pieces, and that produces your platelets. So bone marrow, from bone marrow to stem cell, from the stem cell, megakaryocytes are produced. Megakaryocytes further produces your platelets by the breaking of your megakaryocytes. So this is the shape of your platelet. It is not a certain, specific shape for a platelet. Now, what is the purpose or function of your platelets? They are irregularly shaped, colorless bodies. They do not have nucleus and disc. They have a disc shape. They are sticky. This is the different characteristic of a platelet, that they are sticky. And why they are sticky, I'll just let you know. Because this stickiness of their nature helps them to form a clot. They are sticky, that lets them de-shape or along with the other substances to form a clot to avoid bleeding. Just like RBCs have a function of transportation, white blood cells have a function of defense mechanism. Blood platelets have a mechanism of forming a clot when excessive bleeding is happening. Whenever we bleed or we have an injury on our hands or any other part of the body, the blood starts oozing out. So if it is not stopped, if after some while your whole blood from your body will flow out, and obviously you'll have feel sick or the loss of blood. But what happens in the natural phenomena of platelets, what happens whenever you have an injury and the blood starts oozing out, the platelets become active and they start gathering over that part of your injury and stick to that injury and start forming a clot. Now, how this clot is formed, I'll tell you through the video and picture. It is a normal response of body to a bleeding injury to control the loss of your blood. Now, what happens, as you can see in this picture, these are your red blood cells that are going to ooze out from the part of injury. This is the broken blood vessel, and this is the joint blood vessel. For example, why the blood is oozing out, basically when you injure your blood vessel inside cell, your skin gets injured and the vessels underneath it gets injured and breaks. Now your broken blood vessel, the blood will start moving out, and the blood that is moving out is your red blood. It means your red blood cells are moving out. So what happens, the platelets, as you can see, these smaller ones, they become activated and their surface becomes sticky. They start coming towards that injured part and stick to that injured part. And when they get activated, they start forming clots by blocking those RBCs from moving out of those vessels and start producing this clot. This is called a clot. Not only by sticking to the RBCs and forming a blockage of the vessel, but they also attract a protein or produce a protein that is known as fibrin. Basically, it's a fibrinogen that becomes activated and start producing fibrin. Fibrin is a fiber that is in the form of threads that starts gathering along the whole clot and blocks that surface or hardens it in order to prevent the blood flow. This all forms your platelet. This is how it prevents your excessive blood loss from the cell, from the body. Now, this is a small video that can show you how these are your platelets, and this is when they are activated. This is the sticky part of the cell. These are thrombins, or the proteins that are present in your plasma that are also helping in and fibrinogen. We are talking about fibrin, so just focus on that fibrin part. These are the fibrinogen that accumulate together and forms a big fibrin, and hence they gather or rotate around that clot, forming it as a hard part. These are your platelets. Red blood cells, they are gathering around your clot, first sticking to it and then producing the fibers, and then that fiber is going to, like a thread, going to harden that clot, and hence your body will stop flow of your blood outside the body. So this is how it provides the defense. So as I told you in the start that we are going to discuss some of the blood disorders after the components of the blood. So here we are going to start that. There are basically three kinds of blood disorders. Number one is bleeding disorders that is associated with your platelets, and the other is leukemia, and third is thalassemia. leukemia. Here we will discuss only leukemia and thalassemia in detail. But before that, I want to tell you a very common disease or a condition that is associated with your red blood cells, that is also present in many of the people, especially in girls. It is called anemia. The patient is called anemic. What happens in that you have a less number of RBCs in your blood, and hence less number of hemoglobin inside it. And when you have less hemoglobin, so automatically the bond that it's going to make with your oxygen, or the tendency for it to bind with the oxygen, will be decreased. And when the less oxygen will be able to bind with your RBCs and flow across the whole circulatory system, it can lead to different diseases. Similarly, for thalassemia, anemia is again a leading cause of thalassemia, and it can occur in thalassemia. It can be after effect of thalassemia as well. So here I'm going to just differentiate between these two, and then we will discuss them in detail through a video. What is leukemia? Leukemia is the increased white blood cells. Increased white blood cells means that you have increased number of WBCs in your blood. I told you before that when you have an increased WBCs, it means that the body is infected, and the body, as a response, the WBCs are increased to fight against that antigen or infection. But here in leukemia, it's not because of an infection. It is an abrupt or unnecessary growth of white blood cells without any reason. And it could be due to genetic mutations, mean when you have some changes in the formation of your WBCs at the genetic level. So it might start producing your WBCs without any need. It can occur as a result of leukemia. It can occur in the result of leukemia. Now, leukemia is a kind of cancer. And you know, cancer is always the mutation or the excessive growth of the cells. Cancer is always represented by the excessive growth of a certain type of cells. In leukemia, it is the growth of your white blood cells, which are not required. Now, we'll look into detail about leukemia, but let's compare it with thalassemia, that how it's different from leukemia. Thalassemia is a genetic condition in which your genes have some mutations or changes in it that produces your abnormal red blood cells. So hence thalassemia is a disease of your red blood cells, and leukemia is a disease of your white blood cells. Now what happens in thalassemia, abnormal kind of red blood cells are produced, so its whole function is disoriented and it's not performed properly, and thus it causes many symptoms and effects. So let's look into detail what is leukemia, and then we'll move on to thalassemia. Now here is leukemia. As you can see in the picture, this is the side internal structure of your normal blood, and this is the leukemia. You can easily see the difference that normal blood shows more RBCs and leukemia shows more white blood cells, which are of different kind. So here you can see you have got platelets as well. You have got erythrocytes, monocytes, neutrophils, lymphocytes. All kind erythrocytes are the red blood cells, while monocytes, neutrophils, lymphocytes, basophils, these all fall under the category of white blood cells. Now they have equal amount as per need amount of your blood components, but RBCs are more because obviously more RBCs are required for the transportation, while white blood cells are only required at the time of need, and they increase in number at the time of infection. But in leukemia patient, when you will see the blood of a leukemia patient, they will have this WBCs in a more count or more in number. Now, what are the characteristics of the leukemia? Leukemia is basically, as I told you before, is a cancer. So it is the uncontrolled production of your leukocytes. What are leukocytes? It is the other name for your white blood cells. So it is basically characterized by uncontrolled production of leukocytes. That's why it is called a white blood cell cancer, as it's shown in the picture. Now, why is this WBC is increased in number? It could be as a result, this is the main pathology, that is the main cause of this is your abnormal WBC that can greatly increase in your circulating blood. It could be caused by cancerous mutation of lymphogenous or myelogenous cells. Myelogenous cells are your bone marrow cells. Again, as I told you before, bone marrow cells produces your stem cells, and they are further producing some other cells that are resulting in the form of your white blood cells or RBCs. So myelogenous cells could have a genetic, mutation or change, or lymphogenous means that are responsible for producing your lymphocytes. That is one kind of your agranulocytes. one type of your white blood cells. So it could be because of your cancerous mutation. Cancerous mutation means abnormal growth, means your genes are getting an information of producing that white WBCs without any infection. So this means that there is some abnormality in the patient's blood. So this is why it produces a lot of amount of your WBCs, and hence it results in your leukemia. Now these are basically the main cause of your cancerous production of cells. Now, what are the types of leukemia? There are different kinds of leukemia depending upon the white blood cells. As I told you before, white blood cells have several types: granulocytes, granulocytes, and further they are classified into monocytes, basophils, etc. So depending on those types of cells which are being mutated or being produced abnormally, they are differentiated and produced at a okay. Before that, depending on those white blood cells type, they are named as that specific disease or a leukemia. Now, there is one more characteristic of such kind of cells: when they are produced abnormally, they have lesser lifespan as compared to the normal white blood cells. They are differentiated and produced at a faster rate than normal rate. Means they are produced at a faster rate. They are formed at a faster rate as compared to the normal cells. Now, if it is the normal production of your neutrophil cells, it will be known as neutrophilic leukemia. It will be called as neutrophilic leukemia. It will be, if it is because of some other kind of cell, for example, basophil, it could be basophilic leukemia, or eosinophilic leukemia, or monocytic or lymphocytic leukemia, if the cells that are abnormal are monocytes or lymphocytes. So these are the different kinds of cells based on the types of cells. So the characteristics is, first, they are produced in a great number due to the cancerous mutation of your lymphogenous or myelogenous of bone marrow cells. It means the parent cells have some genetic mutation. Then there are different kinds of leukemia depending on the white blood cells. Then they are differentiated and produced at a faster rate, when their means their production is more as compared to normal cell. Now, it is a serious disease, and victim needs to change of blood regularly. It is a very serious disease which cannot be easily treated by your medications or antibiotics or any such thing. You need to transplant or transfuse another person's blood in order to get cured, and the person who is having leukemia needs to change his or her blood frequently. It can be cured by bone marrow transplant. The only cure or the treatment of this is to actually change the parent cell that is producing that abnormal cells, and those are your bone marrow. So you need to transfuse or transplant a bone marrow, and the bone marrow could only be transplanted from a sibling, that is your brother or sister or your parents. This is the only way of curing, because you are going to completely change the bone marrow that is producing the cells. We are going to insert a normal bone marrow, and hence normal cells will be produced. The ratio of occurrence is of this leukemia is 8% in males and 7% in females. It means the ratio is more in your males. There are more chances in males to get this kind of disease. Now, leukemia patients have different kinds of symptoms. They are anemic, as I told you before. Just like in thalassemia, even in leukemia, you have a symptom like anemic, means you have red blood cell count lesser in amount. Obviously, when WBC is increased, the other count of the cells will be decreased. You will become anemic. They suffer from brain hemorrhage. Brain hemorrhage means the vessels that are present in your brain, they are ruptured, or their cells are not working properly, or the red blood cells are lesser there and the oxygen is not transported there, or due to any reason the vessels are being not proper, they are doing their proper function, or destroyed. So there is insufficient body defense mechanism. So you are having the patient will be having anemia plus brain hemorrhage. Hemorrhage is the destruction. Brain hemorrhage and insufficient body defense of mechanism, because they are having a lots of WBCs, but none of the WBC will of their benefit, because it's not producing the work for your defense. Instead, it is just an abnormal growth. So this is the result of your leukemia, or the abnormal growth of your WBCs. So hence, what is leukemia? Leukemia is the abnormal growth of your white blood cells. It can compromise your immune system of your body. There is no particular treatment for your leukemia. Only cure is to transplant the bone marrow, that is removing the problem from its root. from the kind where the cells are being produced, we are going to remove that bone marrow and transplant another bone marrow that is producing normal cells. If the transplant is not done because it's very expensive and not easy for everyone to get it, so other thing is to transfuse blood every other day, and you will be requiring, because blood as I told you, they all have so many functions, and these functions could not be stopped and even for a single minute. Circulatory system is a very important part of your body. So if your blood is not working properly, so you need to transfuse it again and again, because leukemia can result in your lesser amount of RBCs functions will be destroyed, platelet function will be destroyed, and WBC is there but it's not performing its functions. It's also dangerous. So this is all about your leukemia. Let's move on to thalassemia. Okay, here is the image for a blood of a thalassemic patient and the normal patient blood. As I told you in the differentiation, that thalassemia is a disease of red blood cells. Leukemia was a disease of pure abnormal growth of white blood cells. Now, here it's not abnormal growth, but here it is malformed growth of red blood cells. Means in a normal cell circulatory system, you can see that you have proper shaped red blood cells, you have white blood cells, and you have platelets. But in the thalassemic patient, the shape of the red blood cell is changed. That is, they are malformed red blood cells. What is the cause of this? The only cause is the genetic mutation, means the genes that are responsible to give information regarding the formation of these red blood cells through the bone marrow and stem cells is giving the inappropriate information, means the gene is being mutated. There is problem in the gene, and thus it is called genetic problem. Why? Because it could be inherited from your parents or some forefathers or anyone in the family. So that's why it's known as genetic, means the gene in here is not working properly. Now the word thalassemia is derived from a Greek word thallus and hema. Hema is blood, as we are already aware. We're talking about hemoglobin protein. Thalassus means sea. It means the sea of blood. Now, what is the other name for this thalassemia? It is also called Cooley's anemia, after the name of Thomas B. Cooley, an American pediatrician. Pediatrician is the one who deals with who treats the children. He's a doctor who treats specifically who is for the children. Now, he actually studied about this disease and interrogated it. Not interrogated, he actually went into deep what is the cause and pathology of this disease, and hence this disease named after him. So he concluded that this is a genetic disorder of blood in which abnormal hemoglobin is made, leading to decrease in oxygen carrying capacity. As we know that the normal red blood cells are responsible for transportation of oxygen by the help of a hemoglobin protein present inside them. Hemoglobin has to attach to the oxygen molecule, forming hemoglobin combination and complex, and hence it moves around the whole circulatory system. But in the genetic disorder, the red blood cells are not in their proper biconcave shape. They have the different shape because of the gene that is responsible for the formation of these has some issues. It is not properly giving the information of their formation. So abnormal, obviously, when the red blood cell shape is changed, the hemoglobin shape will be changed. Abnormal hemoglobin will be there, and when there will be abnormal hemoglobin, it might be it might happen that it can lead to decrease in oxygen carrying capacity or completely block the oxygen carrying capacity because of the change in shape. So it might not attach to the oxygen like a normal hemoglobin or red blood cell. So hence this is a genetic disorder of blood in which abnormal hemoglobin is made, leading to decrease in oxygen carrying capacity of the red blood cells. Now, red blood cells are destroyed at a faster rate, leading to anemia and need for repeated blood transfusion. As we discussed in leukemia, white blood cells are produced at a faster rate. They were produced at a faster rate. Here, red blood cells are destroyed at a faster rate. They are formed abnormally, they are malformed, and then they are destroyed at a faster rate. When they are destroyed at a faster rate, means they are new red blood cells. There is a need for new red blood cells to be produced. In the meantime, if there are no RBCs, and they are destroyed quickly, and new RBCs will take time to produce. So that time will result in the decrease in the RBCs in your blood volume, and that decrease in your RBCs will cause you anemia. And for this purpose, you need to have a blood transfusion. So, like leukemia, this patient also needs to have a blood transfusion, that is red blood cells. From a normal person. Otherwise, the person might have difficulty in surviving. As you can see in the picture, the patient who is having thalassemia usually have to be, every other day they have to transfuse a normal blood to get the normal RBCs and for the proper functioning of their RBCs. And this is a very expensive process. Now, what are the characteristics that can tell you that a person is thalassemic? Now, it can be characterized by the presence of microcytes. When you take a blood sample of such a patient or thalassemic patient, you'll see that they are characterized by presence of microcytes. What are microcytes? Micro means smaller, cytes means cells. Basically, when the erythrocyte means your red blood cells are lesser in size, lesser than 5 micrometer or less in diameter, they are known as microcytes. As I told you, it is a disease in which the red blood cells are malformed. They are not produced properly. The genes are malfunctioned. They are not giving proper information. So the cell shape or size will not be proper. Hence, microcytes are produced instead of the normal erythrocytes. So this will show that the person is having genetic issue with the red blood cells or thalassemia. So this is the first characteristic of your disease. Second, by splenomegaly, that is, megaly means bigger, enlargement of spleen. The splenomegaly, spleen is that part of your body or that organ in which the RBCs are destroyed. By splenomegaly means enlargement of spleen or by changes in bone and skin. Now, what do you mean by splenomegaly? How splenomegaly is telling you? As I told you before here, that RBCs are destroyed at a faster rate. They are first formed malformed, like you'll see in the form of macrocytes in the blood, that they are in smaller size or different shape. Secondly, you'll see that the spleen has enlarged. The size of spleen is bigger. Why? Because the RBCs are destroyed at a faster rate, and more RBCs as compared to a normal person are destroyed in the spleen. When there are more RBCs fragments in the spleen size will be, so spleen will become swollen and the size will be increased. So splenomegaly also shows that a person might have a thalassemia. It is the second symptom. Or the characteristic that can show the person is having thalassemia. Third, it by changes in bone and skin. Now, how the bone and skin will be changed? Because your bone marrow is already, not working properly. It is having mutated genes. Plus, skin will have effects due to your RBC, lesser amount of RBC count. When you will have less amount of RBCs or lesser oxygen, your skin will start becoming pale or weakish or yellowish. So it will tell, or even bluish if the oxygen is not there. Whenever there is a lesser oxygen at some part of the skin, it becomes bluish. And if the RBC count is less, so it becomes pale or yellowish. So these two symptoms can also tell that the person is having thalassemia, or the person will become weak. Thalassemia has two kinds: alpha thalassemia and beta thalassemia. Now, alpha thalassemia is a defective synthesis of alpha chain. Defective synthesis of beta chain causes beta thalassemia. Now, what is this chain? When I was telling you about hemoglobin and the globular protein, which is a globular protein present in the RBC, I told you that they are produced by two. They are formed, or their structure consists of two kinds of chains. That hemoglobin, which is a globular protein, it is basically a protein, but it's called globular because it is in the form of a ball. The fibers are linked together in a network that forms a globe. So that's why it is known as a globular protein. And that protein has 4 chains: 2 alpha chains and 2 beta chains. Alpha is the name of the two specific same kinds of chains, and beta is the name of the two other same kinds of chains. Now, until and unless these four kinds of chains are linked together, a globular protein, that is hemoglobin, will not be formed. Hemoglobin is a part in that globular protein present. Each each protein, globular protein, has four sites, that is having four hemoglobin. So each globular protein can bind with four oxygen molecules at a single time. So and those four sites are 2 alpha and 2 beta on the 2 alpha and 2 beta chains. So basically in RBCs we have a globular protein that is a network of 2 alpha and 2 beta chains of proteins. On these chains, each chain has a hemoglobin on it, and on that hemoglobin oxygen is attached. So 2 alpha chains, when they have gene mutations, they are not formed properly, so it becomes alpha thalassemia. If the problem is occurring in the formation of the beta chain, it will cause your beta thalassemia. But even if single chain is destroyed or not formed properly, it can cause effect on the whole globular protein and hence the RBC. So either if it's alpha or beta, it is going to cause you thalassemia. Okay, so that's why it is named as alpha thalassemia and beta thalassemia. Now, what are the effects of this kinds of thalassemia? What will happen to the patient that is having this disease? First of all, that patient will have growth issues. Why? Because he or she will not put on weight or grow in height, because they will have bone. I told you, bone will also be defected, so bone will not grow. So because bone marrow is defected, so not putting on weight or growing in height. So it will have, the patient will have growth issues. Next is anemia, because RBCs are destroyed. They are not destroyed actually. They are destroyed at a rapid rate. Plus, they are not formed properly. So oxygen complex will not be formed, and hence red blood cell deficiency will be there, leading to your tiredness, weakness, and shortness of breath, because oxygen will be limitized. Shortness of breath will be there, weakness and tiredness, because the blood will not be circulated properly in the circulatory system. And whenever blood is not able to flow properly, you feel headache or certain kind of disease like low blood pressure and high blood pressure. This is all because of your RBC flow, your red blood cells flow. Because the energy that we are getting to move along is because of this red blood cells and the red blood cells that are giving us oxygen because of it. Okay, so if anemia can cause, and that will result in your leading to tiredness, weakness, and the shortness of breath. Next effect can be that you'll have yellowness in your skin, plus in your eyes, or the patient's liver will be compromised because of this RBC, yellowing of the skin and whites of the eyes, leading to jaundice. Swollen abdomen means tummy. Your tummy will be swollen all the time because of your enlarged liver or spleen. Because I told you that in a fetal or embryonic stage, it is the RBCs, the white blood cells are formed in the liver or spleen, but at a mature stage, they are produced through bone marrow. But wherever they have produced, at the end they have to be broken down into the spleen or liver. So when they are broken down, as I told you about splenomegaly, when they are broken down at a faster rate and the new RBCs are not formed at that faster rate, so you will have more broken pieces of RBCs in liver and spleen, and hence it will result in the enlargement of both of them. And when they will be enlarged, obviously your outer surface of that liver and spleen, that is your skin, will be enlarged, and it will show in the form of your swelling of your abdomen or tummy area. Next is weakness and fatigue that you will experience as a result of this thalassemia. Weakness and fatigue because the blood is not flowed properly, oxygen is not getting to your brain and your cells and your organs will not work, you will not have energy. Oxygen is also responsible in the breakdown of your food in order to give you energy. So when you are not getting oxygen because of RBCs malfunctioning, so you are not going to get energy, and if you will not get energy, you will feel tiredness, that is fatigue, and weakness, and hence the patient is more prone to other infections. So this was all about your thalassemia and leukemia. I hope it's clear to you. If you have any questions, we can discuss in the next slide. Thank you.